Kutupalong, a beautifully lyrical name. I wonder if any of you know what it is. Is it a river, a flower, a person, or a village? Let me tell you, it has its claim to fame and should rightfully be known by everyone. Allow me to dispel the suspense. Kutupalong holds the dubious distinction of being the world's largest refugee camp. Not only is it the world's biggest refugee camp with over 1 million people, it is also the most densely populated. And it took just 6 months for its population to more than double its size, according to reports from the World Food Program. About 30,000 ramshackle huts packed together on a hilly terrain, it is home to more than 1 million Rohingya refugees. A 2-hour drive from Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. It was a sleepy, unknown hamlet till a few years ago, until the Rohingya crisis escalated in neighboring Myanmar. On the ground, it is sprawling, chaotic, and unimaginably crowded. And if you were looking for a definition of misery, then this is it. I spent last Christmas with my team at this camp, engaging with the Rohingya children, soaking in the latent energy that these children possessed and trying to be the catalyst that would turn that energy into a meaningful avenue of growth and development. January 2018, another camp, another place, the same story of neglect, human apathy, and resultant human suffering. Located in the Bekaa Valley on the border of Lebanon and Syria, this place does not exist on the map. It does not have a name, and neither do the hundreds of Syrian refugees who live here without any papers or IDs, as they lost everything when they fled the war in Syria across the border. It was bitterly cold and wet, with the plastic sheets of these tents the only barrier from the elements. We ushered in the new year with 600 Syrian refugee children, communicating with them through art and music to overcome language barriers, and just soaking in the boundless enthusiasm of these children despite the freezing cold outside. December 2015, Run of Kutch, an utterly arid landscape. It's waterless, parched, and without a twig of grass or greenery in sight. It was literally as if we were on Mars. 76% of India's salt is harvested from this land using age-old primitive methods by a migrant tribe of laborers known as the Agaryas, who for centuries have worked to extract salt from the stagnant seawater. They harvest the salt with their bare hands and walk bare feet across the corrosive salt water. None of them have shoes, and the salt-laden air that they breathe in ensures that most of them do not live beyond the age of 40. Every single pair of hands in these families work in the pans, including children as young as 6. Infant mortality is therefore sky high, and almost every single person suffers from lesions and blisters on their limbs. And these open wounds fester and become infected due to a complete lack of medical facilities. And there's a saying amongst the Agaryas that death comes in 3 forms. It is either due to gangrene or from tuberculosis, or due to blindness caused by constant exposure to the blinding sun reflecting off the white salt crystals. And what does all this labor get them? Just 60 rupees, that's less than $1 US, for producing 1,000 kilograms of salt, whereas the price the Indian customer pays is nearly 100 times higher at rupees 5,500. It is indeed ironical that despite being tinged with the blood of these hapless people, The salt on our dinner tables remains so white and shining. None of the Agaria children I spent time with in the winter of 2015 go to school. None of them have ever had light in their huts at night until we distributed hundreds of solar lamps to the families living in the Kutch. Another forgotten people whose children lack even the basic facilities that we take for granted in the developed world. Children with unbridled passion and energy, just waiting for an opportunity to express itself. Viewed from within these comfortable, warm surroundings, these images do seem so alien and of a world so far removed from ours. Yet the harsh reality is that they do exist, a living, breathing mass of humanity, a majority of them youth, who, as I've discovered, have the same creativity and definitely a greater urge to bring about change and influence the process of sustainable development. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keheksha. I'm 18 years old, and I'm the founder-president of social innovation enterprise Green Hope Foundation. I'm extremely motivated that my work over the last 10 years has been recognized, with me being chosen as a United Nations Human Rights Champion and the youngest recipient of Canada's Top 25 Women of Influence 2018. Thank you. My green journey began when I was 8 years old, when I planted my first tree on my 8th birthday. And my advocacy work on sustainability took me to the largest environmental conference, Rio Plus 20, in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, in 2012, where I was the youngest person to address a press conference on the World Day to Combat Desertification. I was only 12, probably the youngest amongst all the 50,000 delegates present there, a congregation of heads of states, policy shapers, decision makers, activists, but only a handful of children. It was our future that was being decided, but by others, by adults who probably wouldn't even live to see that future. I thought that this was very unfair. We, children and young people, deserved the opportunity to define our own destiny. We needed to be the fuel of change, and that prompted me to found my own youth organization, Green Hope Foundation. The point I'm trying to make is that you don't need to be 18 in order to become a change maker. Age is just a number. If you have the passion and conviction, you can become a trailblazer. Green Hope Foundation works to provide young people like me a platform to learn about sustainability challenges and then take ground-level actions, enhance community awareness, influence policymaking that determines our future well-being. Green Hope's vision is to be a vehicle of change and empowerment for our generation, which I believe is the last one that has the opportunity to take actions to mitigate climate change and stop this environmental degradation before it is too late. Maria Montessori once famously said, "The hidden energy that can help humanity is that which lies hidden in the child." And we use education for sustainable development as a transformative tool to engage and educate children, some as young as 6, to become integral drivers of the sustainable development process, turning them into agents who bring about change through action. My involvement in the Sustainable Development Dialogue since 2012 has made me realize that the process of negotiations and high-level discussions is never-ending. While our policymakers continue to debate about whether climate change is real, our fragile ecosystems are wilting and decaying under the onslaught of pollution and overconsumption. And if ever there was a time to act, it is now, and grassroots conservation action driven by children has been my mantra ever since I founded Green Hope Foundation. I developed an advocacy tool which I named Environment Academy, which is essentially a workshop organized by children and young people for children and young people. And we have conducted over 150 academies in over 25 countries to date, directly educating more than 20,000 young people. We use art, dance, music, sport, and drama to explain the environmental challenges and goals. And this enables us to transcend language barriers. Armed with this knowledge, our youth members venture out into their local communities, taking small but definitive steps towards conservation. So far, we have planted more than 20,000 trees worldwide. Our work on achieving Goal 7 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, that's renewable energy, is a bottom-up process wherein we aim to light up the lives of those in remote, poverty-stricken areas using solar technology. And we have distributed hundreds of solar lamps in villages across India, Nepal, and most recently in Bangladesh, where we spent the last 10 days of 2018. Our members have recycled more than 100 tons of waste. They've gone door to door promoting awareness about the need for environmental conservation and have cleaned up over 150 beaches across the Americas, Middle East, and the Indian subcontinent. Now, mangrove conservation is one of our key focus areas wherein we kayak into the mangroves to conduct cleanup campaigns and work on rehabilitation projects where we've planted more than 2,000 mangroves across the Middle East, in Suriname in South America, and in the Sundarbans, which is the world's largest mangrove forest spanning 2 countries, India and Bangladesh. And deforestation, pollution, overconsumption, rising sea levels have all taken a huge toll on these fragile ecosystems, which actually act as natural barriers against natural disasters. So in 2017, our members spent 2 weeks on the Indian side engaging the local communities and trying to educate them on why it's so important that they protect their mangroves. Similarly, in Bangladesh, we also forayed deep into the Sundarbans to engage the local communities there. And we had to travel through by bullock cart, by boat to cross the rivers, because these were really remote areas. But the really mind-boggling thing was that there was so much plastic litter in these remote forests. So through our workshops and activities, we engaged the residents of 3 villages and explained to them the importance of moving to a sustainable lifestyle. And like I said before, we use art, music, and dance to transcend language barriers so that sustainability becomes easier for them to understand. After we explained the environmental challenges and goals wherein the entire village was involved, we asked the children to draw out their solutions on white t-shirts. And their passion and creativity really amazed us. Our workshops are never about telling people what to do, because that never works. Rather, we give the children the opportunity to come up with their own solutions and how to implement them in their local communities, what actions they need to take. And this little boy in the picture explains what he drew on his t-shirt, how he's not going to throw waste into the river in front of his house anymore, which would stop the killing of birds and animals. Instead, he is going to segregate his waste and use his organic waste as fertilizer for growing his family's crops. And together, we planted more than 200 mangrove saplings with the children. We work on ocean conservation campaigns, especially focusing on turtle rehabilitation habits in the Middle East, in Suriname with green and leatherback turtles, as well as here in Ontario with freshwater turtles. And now there has been a role reversal of sorts. Green Hope youth are now invited by corporates, hotels, and a host of other entities to come and speak to their staff about how they can become more eco-friendly and be a part of our environmental initiatives. And through all of our actions, we focus on tackling inequality and promoting inclusivity, because our world now has more refugees than World War II, and 168 million children are trapped in child labor worldwide, with many of them girls, much younger than me. This is 10-year-old Redha at the Syrian refugee camp, and she speaks to us about the beautiful garden that she had back at home. And she said that when the snow stopped in the camp, she and her friends would plant trees all across the camp so that it resembled the garden back home. And that is our objective, to empower children so that they can come up with simple, doable actions that forms a chain reaction that encourages other children to follow Redha's lead. In July 2016, I was in Nepal, where I spent time at a home for HIV-positive children and for children of prisoners. And I encountered the same passion for environmental conservation amongst these children, most of whom only had a few years left to live. And they drew up action plans to reduce waste and give up plastics. And they did this even though many of them would not even be alive to see the fruits of their labor. We also conducted workshops for the children from war-torn Sudan who've now sought refuge in Malaysia. And the good thing is that these children have far better infrastructure and facilities than those that we'd encountered before. And through all of our academies, we promote the concept of environmental conservation and how they can move towards 100% renewable energy. In summer of 2018, Green Hope was invited by the president of Suriname in South America to engage his youth in the Sustainable Development Agenda. And while we were there, we had visited an orphanage, home to mostly girls, some of them as young as 5. And these girls are now running a pilot project in their schools and homes, trying to stop the use of plastics. And that vindicated Green Hope's belief that sustainable development is a bottom-up process and can only be achieved by empowering every single section of civil society, especially those who are marginalized. Thereafter, we conducted a similar workshop for the marginalized indigenous communities, that's the Maroon tribes of the Amazon rainforest. This brings me back to Kutupalong, where I spent last Christmas with my team. We had seen the pictures of the plight of the Rohingya refugees on television, but the reality on the ground was far worse and absolutely nightmarish, something that no words or images can ever truly describe. It was literally as if the world had forgotten them. Yet they're human beings just like you and me, with the same right to a life of dignity. Every day, 50 children are born in this camp. Many of them do not survive their first week. Abuse, trafficking, exploitation all add to the pangs of hunger and disease. Girls as young as 14, even younger, are married off to men in their 60s just to escape from this life. This bamboo structure, the ramshackle bamboo structure, is their community center where the Green Hope team conducted their environmental workshops. And we spent the entire day singing and dancing with them, teaching them about the importance of preserving their environment for themselves and for their future. Now, when 1 million people live in cramped conditions, sanitation becomes a major issue. And in camps like these, basically, health and sanitation, hygiene, do not exist. So we explained to the children why it was so important that they wash their hands before a meal and take baths regularly, at the same time saving water. And then we wanted the children to pass on these habits to the adults of their community. Together, we drew beautiful images depicting the planet of our dreams. And you'll notice I say drew because none of these children have ever been to school, so they don't know how to read or write. But their laughter and smiles were the best Christmas presents that we could have ever asked for. 8-year-old Nur Fatima pledged to stop using plastics, and 9-year-old Akramalau drew a child planting trees. Together, we planted several saplings in the area behind their homes with the temporary shelters, which now serve as their homes, as a mark of hope for the future. 5-year-old Mehendi was amongst the most enthusiastic, her tiny hands as soft as the leaves of the neem tree that she was planting. And they vindicated my belief that every child has the potential to become a change maker. All we need is an opportunity. This is a New Year's message from 8-year-old Rizwan. Rizwan does not know what tomorrow holds for him, where his next meal will come from, whether he will ever go back home to his village across the border. I challenge any of you to smile if you were, God forbid, in his situation. But he has the positivity and the urge to look through the dark clouds that surround him and wish for a better future for others. And that is the energy that one needs to tap into. Empowerment begins at ground zero, and the onus is on all of us, those of us who are fortunate enough to have access to education and live in a society with rules and rights, to step out of our comfort zones and make a difference and act, not just sigh and shake your head when confronted with disturbing images on television, but to actually go out there and make a difference. These children have the power to bring about a better order, and the dream of a sustainable future will continue to elude us until we allow children to be the fuel of change. Thank you.